In this video, I'm going to show you how to build this AI image background remover. So this is the landing page, and when you click on try now for free, you land in the projects page. These are the previous pictures that I removed the backgrounds from, and you can upload the picture. Let's go ahead and select this picture over here. Once you upload your picture, you can see there's this beautiful loading state, and then you land over here. So here you can click on remove background. This is going to take just a few seconds, and now we have the result. And as you can see, this is the image after removing the background. Pretty cool. You can also compare it using this beautiful slider over here. And of course, you can download it. Of course, in order to use this application, you should log in. I'm already logged in here, but you can also log out. And we have this login screen with email and password, and you can also sign up if you don't have an account yet. So we're going to be building this with my favorite tech stack. These are just the tools that I prefer working with. First of all, of course, React. And for the framework, we're going to be working with TanStack Start, which is one of the easiest ways to create a full stack React application. We're also going to be using Supabase for the backend, which means for the authentication so that users can create an account, log in, and also for saving and uploading their images. For the UI components, we're going to be using ShadCN UI. This is going to make the UI not only beautiful and easy to work with, but also we're going to get access to some pre-built code blocks from the official ShadCN UI website. And the cool thing with ShadCN UI is that we also have access to third-party UI components that we're going to use in this project as well. So it's just a huge time saver. For the AI part, which is removing the background, in this case, we're going to be using BriaAI, who are also kindly sponsoring this video. And by the way, removing an image background is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just a simple example to understand how all these parts work together, but you can also do way more with AI. You can also completely modify the background by providing a description. You can also make the background blurry. You can also remove background of a video. There are so many possibilities, as I'm going to show you right away. So this project is a great way to get into AI if you still haven't built an AI app up until now, which was the case for me. So let's get started. So my approach to creating this application is actually very simple. We're going to start by creating a new TanStack Start project, setting up ShadCN UI. Then we can start tackling the login functionality directly. We're going to create a Supabase project on the Supabase website, then use that in our application, create a login and sign up page, as well as protected routes, which means there are going to be pages that you can only access if you are logged in. Then we're going to, of course, set up the image bucket on Supabase and make sure that each user can upload images, but also that each user can only see their own images that they have uploaded and also see their previous uploads. And finally, we're going to check out how to integrate an AI service in the application. And this is when it all comes together. Of course, it helps if you already know React, Tailwind, TanStack Start or Router, TanStack Query. I've made a lot of videos about these topics, but you don't have to because we're going to figure everything out together in this video. If you have any question, please drop them in the comment. And of course, the code is going to be available in GitHub. I'm going to put a link to that in the comment. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's get started by opening a terminal and run npm create TanStack Start at latest --tailwind. This is going to make sure that we have Tailwind installed as well as ShadCN. This is going to take a few seconds to set up. And as you can see, this has created a directory called ShadCN. So let's rename this first. I'm going to rename it from ShadCN to image background remover. And then we can open this in Visual Studio Code by running code image background remover. So let's open the terminal and run npm install. This is going to install all the dependencies that you need, and then run npm run dev. And this is going to start the development server. So this is the application that is right now running. It has multiple pages, and we're actually gonna delete all of this just to have a clean start. Now let's go ahead and decide how our application structure is gonna look like. So inside source, routes, this is basically all the pages that we have, and everything right now is inside demo. So we can just delete this and we can simply have the landing page we can keep. And for now, let's just focus on the home page. So let's just clean this up. I'm seeing right now we have this app here. This is the component that is shown. I'm just gonna delete everything. So let's just return p hello world. Okay, this is great. As you can see, you still have the navigation bar here, and this comes from the global layout, and this is defined here in the root layout. So we have this header here that we can just remove, and this TanStack dev tool we also don't need right now. So this is looking much better. So let's create a different layout for our application. So for the landing page, we can just have a div and some text here. Let's have a header and call it image background remover. And let's have a subheading, the best image background remover on the web. And let's style this stuff a little bit. So let's add a class name. We're using Tailwind CSS here. So let's just make the text big and also bold. And for H2, we can make it big as well. So text 2XL should do it. And let's also add a button. I'm seeing that we don't have a button yet. So let's install this using Shadcn. So npx Shadcn at latest and add button. So yes. The base color, I'm just going to go with neutral. This should create everything that we need. So if right now I try to import button, you can see we get this button suggested. So let's accept this one. And let's give it a text of get started 3. So this is great. Let's just center everything. I'm gonna turn the container into a flex container and put the items in the center and make it a flex call. Let's make the height fill the screen. So min height screen and justify center. So that way we have center everything. As you can see, the text is a bit too close to each other. So I'm also going to add a gap of 2. And this is looking pretty good. So let's go over and add login functionality. So for that, we first need, of course, to set up Supabase. So let's head over to supabase.com and create a new project. So let's give it a name. I'm going to call this image background remover. And for the database password, I'm just going to click on generate a password. I'm going to copy this password and save it in my password manager. That way I can use it later on if I ever need to. The region, I'm just going to leave it in Europe. I also have the option to choose other regions. I'm just going to leave it in Europe. I'm in Europe. That's fine by me. Security option and advanced configuration. This kind of stuff, we actually don't need to change it at all. So let's just create the project. So if you reload the page, it just takes a few seconds for your project to appear. And as you can see here, we have image background remover. That's awesome. So let's head over to authentication. There's just one setting I wanted to change here, and that is this email confirmation. I'm going to turn this one off just to make the whole process a bit faster, especially right now that we are developing the application. You can also turn this on later on. So if you now go to project overview, you can see that there is a section over here on how to connect it to your project. And there is a project URL and an API key. So let's just go ahead and copy these two, and we're going to use these right away in our code editor. So let's jump back to our code. And let's define these environment variables. And for that, we're gonna create a new file .env. And this is where we're gonna set this variable. So Supabase URL, and this is this value over here. And then we have Supabase anon key, and this is the other value that we copied. So let's save this file, and now let's go ahead and set up our Supabase on the front end. So now we can go ahead and install Supabase. So npm install supabase/ssr, and this is for server-side rendering. And now we can go ahead and create our Supabase login and logout functions. For that, inside this lib folder, I'm going to create a new file, and let's call it auth.ts. And here we can generate these functions. But first of all, we also need to generate a Supabase client, which is what we're going to use the whole time to communicate with Supabase. So let's create a new file called supabase.ts. So here we can create a Supabase client. This code actually comes from the documentation, and this just creates a server client. This comes from Supabase/ssr, the package that we just installed. And we need to override how the cookies are set and how they are read. And that's pretty much it. So once we have this, we can get started with creating our own authentication functions. So first of all, we need to check if the user is logged in, and that way we're going to show either a login screen or the project's page. And for that, we can create a new function. Let's call it get user function. And for that, we're going to use the create server function. This comes from TanStack React start. And this function is only going to be run on the backend. And if you call from the front end, it's going to do a remote procedure call, which means it's going to be called on the backend and the result passed to the front end, which is just very helpful in this case. So, and here we can have a handler. And this is going to be an async function. And this is basically the implementation of the function. So we're going to start by grabbing Supabase. So Supabase is equal get Supabase server client. This is the function that we just defined right now. And then we can use Supabase.get user. So this is an async function, and it's going to return data and error. And if there is an error, we're just going to throw a new error with the error description. So error.message. And otherwise, we're just going to return data. And if we hover over this data, you're going to see inside of it, there is a user, and that is the user that we can see here. So we have all of these fields. So what we can do now is to use this function to check if the user is logged in or not. And for that, let's go ahead and create a new route. So if we go to our routes, let's go ahead and create a new folder, and I'm going to call this authed. And inside of this are going to be all the routes that require the user to be authenticated. So we can have, for example, let's create a new file, and let's go to projects.tsx. And as you can see, this is pre-filled for you in the background. So every time you create a route, TanStack Router already creates the content of it already. And here we're going to have a layout, and this is going to be called authed.tsx. So this is the layout that's going to be applied to everything that is inside this authed, and this is the perfect place to check if the user is logged in or not. So if you go right now to /projects, you're going to see that we are seeing this content from the authed layout. And what we can do here is to add a component that comes from TanStack start, and this is called outlet, and this is going to render all the children. So as you can see, hello authed, this comes from this layout, and this outlet is where the children are rendered, and in this case this is the projects route, and this is hello authed/projects, and this is what we see over here. So let's go back to our authed component, and here we're going to use a function called beforeLoad, and this is going to be called basically before the component is loaded, and it's also the perfect place to check if the user is logged in. So let's call the function get user function, And this is going to be async. So let's change this a little bit to an arrow function. That's my preferred way of writing functions. So an async function, and we're going to await. And we're going to wrap this inside a try catch. So let's grab the result here. This is going to be, as we've seen before, user. And we can return is logged in. And this is going to be equal to user.email. So if that is true, then we are logged in. And if there was an error, then we're going to return is logged in. And this is going to be false. So what we can do right now is that inside our route component, we can grab this data. And for that, we're just going to use route.use route context. And the route context is basically what we returned from before load. And this is going to return, of course, is logged in. As you can see, this is type safe. So it's very cool that you cannot just write any field here. If you try writing something else, you just get an error because the field doesn't exist, but is logged in does exist. So what we can do here is that instead of returning this outlet like this, we're going to check if is not logged in, then we're going to return a new component, and let's call this, let's first of all just return anything. Let's write not logged in. Not is not logged in. Anyway, you get the idea, you are not logged in. But we're going to create a new component here, and let's call it login or sign up. And this is going to be the login/sign up page. So let's go ahead and create this new component. So new file in components, and let's create login or sign up.tsx. And I have a snippet here that I like to always use. And this actually doesn't have any props. So like this, and we're going to import it in our page. So we have our login or sign up component. And for the login component, I actually want to use ShadCN. There's already an example there. So UI.ShadCN. If you go to blocks, you can see here there is this login block. And we're going to take this and just adjust it a little bit to make it work for us. So let's go to the code and just copy it from here. And I'm going to create two different forms, basically one for login in and one for signing up. So I'm going to create a new file and call it login form.tsx. And here I'm going to paste what we copied from ShadCN's website and login form that works. We need to install these UI components from ShadCN UI. So let's go ahead and stop this server and install them with npx ShadCN latest add. And here we can just list them up. So card, field. I'm seeing here the input element is also missing. And that's pretty much it. So you can see all these fields have been added. And now we don't have any error anymore. So if you go to our login or sign up component, let's just return login for now. So login form and save. And let's restart the server. So npm run dev. And there you have it. That's our login form. Of course, it's not super responsive. So what we can do here is to just add a max width. I'm going to set it to XL and give it horizontal margin of auto, and this is just going to center it horizontally. And also let's just give it a bit of padding, so padding 4, or maybe padding let's give it 12 maybe. This is looking pretty good, and let's go ahead and just adjust it a little bit. So I'm seeing here we have this login with Google. We're not going to implement that, so let's get rid of it. There's also this forgot password, so let's also remove that one. And this is starting to look pretty good. Of course, if you click on sign up, nothing's going to work. And also if you write your email and password. So of course we need a login function to implement the login functionality. So let's go back to our auth.ts file, and this is where we're going to define, as I said before, all the login related functions. It's going to be very similar. So I'm going to call this login function. And here is supabase.auth. And here there's a function called sign in with password. So this expects an email and password. And to define parameters, here we can use this field called input validator. And here we can define what the input is. And for that, we're going to be using Zod, which is this very useful runtime type validation library. So we can install Zod by running npm install Zod. We have installed Zod, so we can use it here. So it's going to be z.object, and it's going to have a few fields. Let's import this. Okay, there is no automatic import. Let's import it manually. So import z from Zod. And the reason why we are using Zod for validating the input is that these functions can be called from the front end. So you are not sure what the user is going to send you. And just to be on the safe side, you should actually validate the data that you are getting. So email, and this is going to be z.email. And this is just a string with a bit more checks on top, and then a password. And this is going to be z dot, just a simple string. So once you define this input validator, you can get access to the data over here. And these are the parameters that are passed to the function. And if you hover over it, you're going to see it has a type email and password that we just defined. So this data is also clashing with the data that we're getting as a result of this function. So let's rename it over here to form input. And now we can pass these here. So for the email, we can pass in form input.email, and password, we can pass in form input.password. So now that we have this login function, let's use it in the form. So let's search for the form. Here we have it. So on submit. And here we can handle the submission. First of all, we want to call e.preventDefault. This is going to stop the page from reloading. Otherwise, we cannot do anything else. And here we can call our function. So login function, and pass in the parameters here. Of course, we should get these parameters, and we're going to get them from this event. So for that, we can use form data. So const form data is going to be equal to new form data from e.target as HTML form element. It's a bit boilerplatey, but I think it's fine. And here we can have the email. This is going to be form data.get email. So this is the name of the field. And as you can see here, we still don't have it. We just have ID. So we should add the name here right afterwards. So this is the email and password. And this is going to be form data.get password. And this is saying that it could also be null, but that's not the case. So let's just add as string to get rid of this warning. And here, of course, we need to add the names. That way we can access them over here. So here as well. So name is equal password. So what's going to happen is that once you fill your login information and click on login, you're going to be logged in, but we should still also refresh the router because we have this context where we are checking if the user is authenticated. Basically this part over here, and this invalidation needs to happen every time that you log in or log out. This is basically the only place where we're going to do this because that's also the only place where we're going to be storing data in the router. So here we should just invalidate the router, and for that we can just import use router from TanStack router. And after logging in, I can actually have an await over here. Make this async. And afterward, we're going to call router.invalidates. Okay, we've built the login form. Let's build the sign up form, otherwise we cannot actually log in. And as you can see, we have this sign up button here. So it would be good if when you click on it, you switch to the sign up page. So let's go ahead and add one other field here. Let's change the interface here. Actually want to have a different type for the props. So login form props. And here we're just going to have one function, switch to sign in. And this is going to be a simple function. And we can grab it over here. So login form props. And here we have switch to sign in. Can remove this part over here. We're not going to override the class and also the props. And once you click on this sign up, so this is not going to be an A, we're going to use a normal button. I'm just going to use the HTML button because it's unstyled. And on click, we're going to call switch to sign in. Once you save, you're going to see this underline went away. So let's add that back with class name and underline. This is looking great. So let's go ahead and create a sign up form. I'm just going to copy and paste the whole form because it's going to be very similar. We're just going to change a bit of text. And instead of login, it's going to be sign up form. Let's change this here to sign up. Sign up again. So instead of logging into your account, let's create a new account and enter your email below to log into your account. Enter your email below to create your new account. Let's also change the text over here. Don't have an account, so here we're going to change it to already have an account and not sign up, and this is going to be log in, and this is not going to be switch to sign in, it's going to be switch to log in. All right, so let's go ahead and use these forms that we just created. So log in or sign up, have our login form. Of course, we want to show either login or sign up form. So let's go ahead and introduce a state, use state, and it's going to have an initial value of false. And this state is going to be called is log in, and set is log in. So if is login is true, we're going to return the login form. Otherwise, we're going to return the sign up form. And when the user clicks on switch to sign up, we're going to set is login to false. So this should be, of course, a function over here. And we're going to set it to false. And in the case that the user clicks on switch to log in, then we're going to call set is login to true. So now when we switch back and forth between login and sign up, you should see that it works. One thing I just got reminded of in our sign up form, here we are calling the wrong function. It should not be login function. It should be the sign up function that we defined previously. So let's go ahead and sign up. So I'm going to enter my email. This is mail@yusufv.com. And I'm just going to use the same email for my password for now and click on login. Once you look at that, we are logged in. So once you reload the page, you're still logged in. You don't encounter or land in the login page anymore. And if we go back to the home page, again, we're here, click on get started for free. And of course, nothing happens because we should build the redirect, or like when you click on get started for free, you should be redirected to the /projects page. And that's very straightforward to do. So let's just go to our index page. And here we have our button. So let's just add a link inside of this. This comes from TanStack router. And this is going to be linking to /projects. Again, we have the awesome magic completion from TanStack start. That's great. And let's wrap everything with a link. And here the button from Shatsian also accepts a prop called asChild. So it's basically the same element at the end. has the child inside of it, which is this link. And now when we click on get started for free, you land in the /project page. Amazing. So first of all, we need to build the UI for that. And luckily, since we're using chassis and UI, as I told you before, we can use something that is already pre-existing there. So let's just search for SHADN and drop zone. And here you're going to land on this third-party chassis and library, if you may call it, or maybe registry provider. I don't know what's the correct term here. But you have a ready-to-use drop zone components, also like resizable and everything. I don't have any strong design opinions here. I just want it to look clean and to suit the rest. So let's go ahead and just use this one. And you can install it literally by running this one command. I just copy this. And here, let's open a second terminal and paste it. So this is installing from a registry. And as you've seen here, we're really using the official chassis and command. So this has created a new file here in source components, UI, chassis and IO /drop zone. And this is basically the whole drop zone component. Everything in one file. It's just amazing. And I'm going to copy this images example here because we're only going to allow images. How good is that? So let's just take the whole example here. Let's just copy the whole example here. And I'm going to create a new component. I'm going to call it image uploader. So new file, image uploader.tsx. And let's just first return this example. I'm going to rename this to image uploader. I'm missing an E. So rename and let's export this. So now if we go back to our projects page, we can show our image uploader here. So image uploader, and this is looking like this. Not bad at all. Good start. Let's add a bit of padding. So padding 4. And after the image uploader, I also want to have the recent uploads. So recent uploads. And this is where we're going to show the recent uploads basically after this part. And I'm seeing that we also need some kind of top bar. So why don't we go ahead and just add a global top bar? So we can go back to our root component. And here we can add a top bar. So here we can have a few links. So let's have a link and call it home. And this is going to link to home, basically. Import this from TanStack router. And let's give this a bit of padding. So flex as well. Padding 2, border bottom. And let's add a second link. But before that, we can also add some active props. So active props. And here we can pass in a class name and pass font bold. And what this is going to do is that when we're on the home page, okay, this is not the case yet. Maybe when we click on it, you can see that it becomes bold. And when you navigate to a second page, it's not bold anymore. So, and then we're going to do projects. And this is going to link to /projects. Let's give them a bit of gap in between so that they're not stuck with each other. All right, this is looking pretty nice. So you can go back from home to projects. And here we have our uploader component. Okay, so in order to, of course, implement this upload functionality, we need to set up Supabase for that. So let's go back to Supabase. And here you can see where there's this tab storage and files. So let's go ahead and create a new bucket. A bucket is just a big folder or super folder, and inside of it you can actually have normal folders and files. In each bucket you can also define rules, so it's really useful in this case. So I'm going to call this one just images. You can also call it user uploads. It's up to you. I'm just going to go with images. I'm not going to make this public, but I'm going to restrict the MIME types. I just want to have images inside of it, and you can also restrict the file size. Let's restrict this to 25 megabytes. I don't want to allow more than that for now. So let's click on create. Okay, so we have our bucket here. So let's jump to policies. And here we can click on new policy, and we can also use a template for that. So let's see which templates they already have. Allow access to JPG images in a public folder. That's not our case. Give users access to only their own top level folder named as UID. This is exactly what we want. So let's click on use template, and this is going to pre-fill this form for us. This is right now just giving them access to a folder with the same user ID. So each user can have their own folder with the same ID and read from it. But I also want them to be able to select, see what is inside that folder, also insert and delete files inside that folder. Update, I think, is just for renaming or moving or changing the content of a file. And we don't actually need this for this case. Let's click on review and save policy. All right, this is all that we needed to set up on the backend side. So let's jump back to our code, and we're going to create a new server function to upload files to that folder. So for the image uploader, I'm going to create a new function, and this is going to be a server function again, and this is going to be used to upload an image to Supabase. For that, we can create a new file, and this is where we're going to group all the functionality that has anything to do with creating images, removing the background image, and so forth. So let's call this background remover.ts. So let's create a new function, and I'm going to call this upload image function. And this is going to be again created with create server function from React start. It's going to have an input, so an input validator. We're going to provide this right away, and then we're going to have our handler, and this is of course again an async function, and this is where the implementation comes. So this is our base structure. For the input validator, again we're going to use Zod, so this is going to be an object, and it's going to have two fields. First, the content of the file. We're going to come to this type right away. Also going to have the type of the file, so content type, and this is going to be a simple string. Let's import Zod, and for this file, actually this is a very specific type that we're going to define for this file, and that is an unsigned integer array. And the reason behind that is that you cannot just pass a normal file to TanStack start. There's some kind of problem with serializing and deserializing. So that's why we're using that. So this is an object. So inside the handler, we can perform this uploading of the file. So for that, we're going to create our Supabase instance here as well. So Supabase equals create server equals get Supabase server client. And we're actually also going to need a user ID. So await get user ID. So we're going to use this user ID as the base folder where we're going to store the image. And as you've seen in the policy, this is what we need. Otherwise, the users are not allowed to upload anywhere. So each user can only upload to their own folder, and that's why we need to grab the user ID here. For that, I can just reuse a piece of code that I have used from before. So just get authenticated user. That's what we had before. And let's have here, so it's going to return the data, and let's grab user and ID, and let's use this over here. So get user ID, let's rename the function. This is great. And now with Supabase, we can just upload the image. So Supabase dot, let's search for storage. Yeah. And from, so here we're going to pass the bucket name. We named our bucket images. And if you named it user uploads, you should write user uploads here. And we can upload here. There are actually a lot of methods here that we're going to use a few of these. For example, listing or create a signed URL, maybe removing an image. Let's see about that. But right now we're going to upload an image, and the content of it is, of course, data.file. Let's grab data from the handler, and this is the parameters that are passed here. So data.file, and we're also going to pass in the MIME type or file type. Actually, we need a file name before, and then the file, and then the file type, so content type, and this is going to be data.content type. Good. Of course, the destination or the file name, this needs to have a folder in the beginning. So let's create a variable for that. So file name, this is going to be a combination of the folder name, which is of course the user ID. And then we also need the file name. So actually we should call this file path to be more accurate. And then we can also define our file name. And for this, let's just create a random UUID with crypto.generate or random UUID. I'm going to pass this over here. So file name. File path is what we're going to end up passing to Supabase. And just like before, every time you work with Supabase, it could throw an error or return an error, and you have to throw it. If there is an error, we should await the Supabase call because it's asynchronous. It's a promise under the hood. And if there is an error, I'm going to throw new error with error.message in the description. I'm actually not super sure what is the best way of handling errors in TanStack start, but I've seen in a lot of examples that come in the documentation, they also just throw the errors and sometimes even check the error message to check what kind of error happened. Okay, this is looking really good. And what we can do here is just use it in our front end. So let's go to our image uploader. And this is what we have right now. We just have a dummy implementation. The files are just saved locally here in a use state. We want to, of course, use our function. And for this, I actually want to show a loading state, a success state, and error state. I want to make it super clear to the user what is happening right now. And of course, for that, we're going to use React Query. So npm install TanStack React Query is going to install the library. I have made a lot of videos about React Query. It's literally one of my favorite libraries in React. It's a must-have, and you're going to see right away it's really useful. For using React Query, actually in this case, we're going to use a mutation because we're changing data on the backend. So let's go ahead and create a folder in our lib folder, and maybe a file, and let's call this query.ts. So here I just want to group all my queries. Every query that we're going to be using in this project should be here. This way it's very easy to keep track of them and also update the dependencies between them. So I'm going to create a new mutation, and let's call it use upload image. And this is just going to call use mutation. So I'm seeing that my editor still didn't pick up the fact that I just installed TanStack query. So let's import use mutation manually from TanStack React query. Let's see if right now I get, yeah. So use mutation, and this is going to receive the mutation function. And in this case, this is the upload image function. Let's export our new hook, use upload image, and let's just use it here. So we don't need this state anymore, and we're just going to have our use mutation or use upload image mutation. This is going to give us a few fields: mutate status that we can use to show the multiple states to the user, and also going to get the error because we're going to show the error message if there's any kind of error. I'm also going to grab this reset function, which we're going to use in case there's an error to just reset the state. So let's get rid of these files and let's start designing the multiple states that we're going to have. So this is our normal state. If there's no mutation happening, let's have a loading state. Let's have a card for that with a spinner component. I'm seeing that I don't have spinner yet, so let's install spinner with chassis n. Let's import spinner, and let's have a text saying uploading, and let's restart our project. Apparently it stopped running, so npm run dev. We're getting this error, no query client set, and that's because we are using this use mutation hook. For that, we need to wrap our application in a query client provider. So let's go back to our route, and I'm going to create a new folder. This is going to be called app, and I'm just going to put in all the part of the application itself, like everything other than the landing page or the static pages. So I'm also going to move this authored to app. So inside of it, we have this authenticated routes. And let's have a new file here for the layout, and this is going to be called _app.tsx. Okay, so everything that is inside this app is going to be wrapped with the content of this app.tsx, and you can already see it here. So let's return outlet, which is the TanStack router way of rendering the children inside a route. And now we can create a query client. So const client is equal new query client, and we should have a query client provider. So query client provider with client equals client, and let's wrap this inside of it. This is looking pretty good. Let's go back to our spinner component or image uploader. Let's make this a bit bigger. So size 12, and let's center this. So class name, let's make it a flex, items center, and justify center. Looking good. I'm also gonna give this an aspect ratio of square or maybe video. Yeah, video looks good. And I'm also going to give this aspect ratio up here to the drop zone. And the reason behind that is that I don't want to have stuff jumping around when you start uploading. So aspect ratio, aspect video, going to have the same height basically. So we have our uploading UI, then let's design a success and then an error design. So it's successfully uploaded. I'm just going to say successfully loaded image. And this is not going to be a spinner. This is going to be a file check icon. And this one comes from Lucid, which is a very famous icon library. And for the error state, we're going to have a very similar code. And this is going to be with file warning. And let's change the text as well. Error while uploading the image. And let's also show the error if we have an error. So let's add a pre-block and show error.message. Error comes from here, from our custom mutation. So if there's an error, this is going to be passed down here and we can show it here to the user. Right now for designing, I'm just going to add an empty string just to see how this is going to look if there is any kind of error message. As you can see, this is overlapping and really breaking the UI. So let's do something about it. So class name, I'm gonna make it first of all wrap. So for that we can use white space free wrap. This is not bad. Let's give it some kind of margin, maybe 4, that it doesn't touch the sides, or maybe margin X, which is horizontal only. And let's give it a background muted, a bit of padding, and some rounded. This is looking pretty nice actually. So error while uploading image, and I'm gonna have the error description here. And let's also have a button, and this one is just gonna say retry. So when there's an error, you can click on retry, and on click, we're just gonna call reset. This one is also coming from the mutation. So we have our upload, this is success, error, and loading state. So now we only need to bind this with the status that we get from the mutation. So you can just add a few if statements if you like. So status is equal to idle, which means that nothing happened yet. And this is going to be our default state. So here we're just going to show the drop zone. And then we have a status is equal to success, and I'm going to show successfully uploaded the picture. And then we have status is equal to error. Then we're going to show the error state. And then last but not least, if status is equal to pending, which is loading, then we're going to show this uploading. I'm going to put this up here because that's the order that I like it. Just idle, pending, success, and then error. Okay. Now let's go ahead and upload an image and see what we get. So let me just click on image, and nothing happens yet because I forgot to implement this part, which is handle drop, which is where all the magic happens. So here we need to call mutate with these files that are provided to us from the UI. First of all, we only want to upload one file. So we're just gonna grab the first file. Then we need to transform the content of this file. As I've said before, TanStack Start cannot directly accept the content of a file. So for that, I'm just gonna copy and paste this mini code snippet that just grabs the content of the file. We're just calling file.arrayBuffer and then transforming it to this unsigned integer 8 array. So we have an await block, so this function should be asynchronous, so async. And now we can call this mutate function. So mutate, and then we pass in the data, and here we're gonna have our file, and this is the uint8 array that we just created, and then we need the type or content type, and this is gonna come from file.type. Okie dokie, let's see if this works. Upload file. Let's select this image one. Oops. Now there's an error. I'm seeing that there is also this long string that I added here just for testing that I should remove. So let's remove this. Failed to fetch. And I think I know what the error is all about. And the reason why we're getting this error is hidden here inside this upload image function. So by default, when you're creating a server function, you are creating a get function. So the data that we're trying to upload to the server is all happening inside the URL, because when you're working with HTTP GET request, you cannot provide a body, but that's not the case for post requests. So we can actually say here that we want to use the method post. So the parameters that are provided here, these are the parameters that we defined, are actually going to be passed inside the HTTP body. And there is no limit there for what you can provide. So let's save this and let's try again. Upload image. And now we're seeing uploading and successfully uploaded image. How great is that? And now if we go back to our file storage, let's reload, view files, and there's a folder. I guess this is my user ID probably. And here we have a few images. These are the images that we just uploaded. If I click on one of them, there you have it. That's the image that I just uploaded. That's awesome. Okay, so we're making great progress here. Let's just add one more feature, which is, of course, to see the images over here, your image history. And once we have that, we can finally tackle removing image background using a third-party AI service. For that, we just need to create another function, and this one is going to be to list the user's images. So let's go ahead and create a new function. It's going to be actually very similar to this one. Let's just copy and paste it. Let's remove this post method, and let's rename this to get uploaded images. And this time it's not going to get any input. So we can remove this part and also remove the data that is coming from here. And we're not going to use upload, but we're going to use the method list. And here we want to list the content of a folder. And of course, the folder is the user's user ID. So we can get rid of this part and also the file name. We're not creating any new file. And let's get access to the result, which is this data. And let's return it. So return data. Looking good. Now let's jump back to the query. Let's create a new query, export const use uploads. And this is just gonna return basically all the images that the user has uploaded. And this is a function that calls use query. And here we can pass in the query function, which is get uploaded images. And for the query key, I'm just gonna set this to uploads. So great. Now let's jump back to our project. So we go back to this projects page and we can grab our uploaded images. So use uploads, and this is going to return data. And for now, let's go ahead and just try to show this data. So data, and this is going to be an array, map, entry, and let's just show, I don't know what we actually exactly have inside of it. So entry.name, for example. So if I save, you're going to see, oh, these are all the 3 files that we uploaded. So let's create a component to render this. So we're going to create a new component. Let's call it upload card or previous upload card. So previous upload card.tsx, and this is gonna receive the name of the file. This is gonna be a string. So now we need a way to get the URL of that image. Since we are not working with public images, there is no URL built into the file that we get. So we have to create a signed URL because we are logged in as a user, and we can do that because we have the right for that. So for that, we need to create another query. So let's call this use image URL, and we're going to receive the name of the image as a parameter. Let's change this to image URL, and the name is also going to be part of the query key, of course, because it's dependent on it. And let's create a new function. I'm also going to copy and paste this again. Let's rename this to get image URL function. And you know what? Let's rename this and add function at the end just to keep this names convention. Rename symbol. Let's add function at the end. That way I know these are all server functions. So get image URL function. This one also doesn't need to be post, and the parameters are just going to be actually the name. And this is a z.string. Exactly. So for the file name, actually, this is going to come from data. So data and name. So that is the file path. We're not going to use the upload. We're going to use the function called, I think, sign or create signed URL. Okay, this is actually good. Create signed URL, and it should just get the file path. So let me just remove all of this part. And actually, it also gets the expiry. For example, 60 is for URL, which is valid 1 minute. So 60 is 1 minute. Let's do 1 hour, I guess. I don't have any problem with that. So 60 times 60, and this is going to return data. We should rename it so that it doesn't clash with this data coming from up here. And let's call this result, and let's just return result dot find URL. That's it. And if you go back to our query here, we're going to use the other function. So get image URL function, and of course we should pass in the parameter here. So for the name, so the function that we pass in here is going to be passed to the server side function. Awesome. Now let's go back to our previous upload card, and we can call this query over here. So use image URL and pass in the name, data, and let's just display this data for now. So this is going to be the URL, and let's use this. So instead of showing a p element, let's show previous upload card. Name is going to be entry.name. And I'm also going to set the key here since we are displaying an array of elements. And this is going to be entry.id. And let's save. Okay, so we have our URLs. We should just display them as pictures. How good is that? So let's change this a little bit, and let's first add a class name. And we're not going to show this data like this. We're going to show an image component source. And this is going to be this data over here. And let's close the image tag. And as you can see, these are all the pictures that we have uploaded. So let's make this a bit more beautiful. Let's add a class name here, make it give an aspect ratio of video. So aspect video, and let's make the container rounded and overflow clip so that the picture clips. So rounded, maybe large. Yeah, that suits. Let's also show the file name here. We can also show it. So the name and class name. Let's make it text small. Let's add a bit of padding. And let's also give this a bit of a border. So border and border, which is the color of the border. Let's give it a bit of shadow large. We need some gap in between. So let's jump back to our projects page. And this needs to be inside a container. I'm going to make this a responsive grid. So class name is going to be grid calls 1. And starting from the breakpoint of small, we're going to have grid calls 2 and medium grid calls 3 and a gap of 2. So if we take this page, let's open it over here. So it looks like this. And when we make it a bit smaller, it has 2 columns and 1 more, and then it's just 1. That's looking good. Let's wrap this inside a p element, and then we can space this. So space y2. And then we have this very good looking UI. And when we click on a card, we want to land in projects / the ID or name of that picture. So let's make this, let's give this an opacity of 80%. And on hover, we're going to give it opacity of 100 and transition opacity. So when you hover over them, you can see that you can click them. You can make this even more clear by making the cursor pointer and even maybe translate. So translate Y4, okay, minus translate Y4, and this should only happen on hover, and also transition transform. So transition transform. So when you hover over it, you can see there's this effect. I don't know if that's the best effect over here. Maybe I'm going to remove it later. Maybe 4 is too much. Just 2 and transition all. So we can get rid of this error. Okay. And when you click on it, you should land in project / project name. So let's add a new route for that. We are over here, new file, and this is going to be a parameter. So we're going to use a $. So name.tsx, and this should actually be projects.name.tsx. And when we click on this card, we should land there. So we're going to wrap this inside a link component from TanStack router to, and here, of course, is going to be project / name. I just love this auto completion. It's awesome. As you can see here, because we are navigating to this route, which needs this name parameter, we're getting this error. So let's add the missing parameter, and here it's expecting name, and that's the name. And as you can see, these params here. Okay, this is a bit hard to read, but if you try to pass in a number here, you're gonna get an error. So it has to be a string. The developer experience in TanStack is just next level, honestly. Okay, so click here, and you land there. But as you can see, there's something wrong with our pages. And the problem is how we define our pages. Actually, this should be projects.index.ts, or we can put them inside a folder. So it's up to you. I think I'm just going to go with flat routes here. So let's just rename this and add an index part. So now we are in the new page. And here we can finally start having fun and build this background removal tool. So for removing the image background, we're going to be using BriaAI, who are also kindly sponsoring this video. The cool thing about BriaAI is that their LLMs are trained with 100% licensed data. As a European, I know that the AI regulations are just getting more and more. And the fact that this is only trained with licensed data is just saving you from future headaches. But as a developer, what I really like about BriaAI is basically their endpoints and how developer friendly it is. They have a great documentation and a lot of examples. So if you take a look at their endpoints, you're going to see that everything is well documented for the developers. And this is, for example, the endpoint to generate an image. It's just a post request. This is in JavaScript. You can just copy and paste and use in your code, and you pass in the prompt over here. And this is an example output. And if you scroll down, you're going to see the options that you have, and as well as the output of the endpoint. So you're going to get a result, which is an object with the image URL, as well as some other fields. There are also some endpoints for tailored generation. So you can provide your own image and try to reshape it with AI. So as I was telling you before, the possibilities here are just great. There are a lot of different image generation endpoints and also video ones, but the ones that are interesting are the one that we're going to be using today in this video is this remove background. So here you just provide an image, and it can be either URL encoded or you provide an URL. And then BriaAI is just gonna remove the background of that image and provide you with another URL of the new image that doesn't have a URL. So basically this one here, you can see result with a new image URL. They also have an endpoint for replacing a background. So you can provide an image and a prompt. And for example, here in a parking lot, and it just kept the foreground and changed the background. Honestly, this is super powerful. And if you take a look at the code, it's literally just one endpoint. You just provide an image URL and then a prompt with it. You can erase the foreground. I don't know exactly what's the use case for that, but you can also blur the background to make your image look more professional, expand an image, and here you can provide an aspect ratio. So this is the original image and you can make it broad or longer, and enhance the quality of an image, increase the resolution, or maybe even crop out the foreground. Now, these were all just image editing endpoints. There's also some endpoints for video editing. So there's an endpoint to increase the resolution of a video up to 8K, which is a bit mind-blowing, and remove the background, and also generate a foreground mask, which can be useful depending on your use case. So let's go back to the endpoint that we actually want to use, and that is this image editing group. And here we have in version 2 endpoint, there's this remove background, and we just need to make this API request. Of course, for that, you need to have an account, and you can just click on start now on the main page. I'm going to put a link in the description of the video. You can just click on it and you're going to receive 1,000 credits when you sign up. It's all for free. So when you are signed up, you're going to see this dashboard. And if you click here on API key, you're going to see these are the API keys that you can just use. I'm going to copy this API key. This is the one that I'm using in production. If you click on usage, you're going to see that I have just used, I think 15 calls were shown on the other screen. We come back here. I have used 15 out of my 1,000 calls. So every time you make a call, you're just going to use one of these credits, and you have 1,000 to get started, which is really good. The pricing is actually also very cheap. It's like $0.04 per image. And if you're working with videos, this is charged per second. Still very cheap. Now that I have copied my API key, let's go back to the project and let's use this. So in the end file, I'm going to enter my Bria API key. So BriaAI or API key, and let's just paste it here. And now we can create a new endpoint for generating an image without a background. So let's go back to our background remover.ts file. So let's first of all maybe copy that function that we had from Bria. So if we go back to the endpoint that we actually want to use, that's this one. And I'm just going to copy this part. And I also want to grab the response. This is what the response looks like. And let's go ahead and create a function and also a type using that response. And I'm going to call this type Bria remove background type. And that is this one. And let me just correct this string. So this is the response type. And let's create a function here. So this one I'm going to call remove background image Bria, and this is going to be a server function. And for that, I'm actually going to create a function called create server only function. And what this does actually is just creates a normal function. There's no validation or anything like that. But the difference is that this function can only be run on the background. And the reason why I'm doing that is that I don't want this to leak to the front end, and I don't want to make my API key available to the front end. So that's why we're going to wrap this inside a create server only function. Now we can just have a URL as a parameter. So image URL or original image URL. This is going to be a string. This is also an async function. And then we're going to receive a response, and we're going to return await response.json. And this is going to have the type that we have defined down here. So this is Bria remove background type, and that's it. So now that we have this function, we can use it to upload a picture to Bria and then download it from Bria and put it in our folder, in the user folder, and then just show it in the UI. So for that, we're gonna take this function and build on top of it. So get image URL function. Let's change the name to remove image background function, and this is going to receive the name. All good so far. And we also have the result here, which is this signed URL. And instead of returning it, let's actually grab signed URL directly. And now let's call this function. So remove background image Bria and pass in the signed URL. There's one change we need to do here, and that is that, of course, we need to pass this image URL here. And there's also this option that we need to provide, and that is sync. And I'm going to set this to true. That way it's going to wait till the image is generated, then we're going to receive a response. Otherwise, we're going to receive an ID that we need to pull, and that is just a bit harder to do. I find it way easier this way to just basically wait for it. And here we can just provide our API key. So bria.ai key like that. Okay, I'm getting this error here because we're not sure if signed URL exists yet. So actually we should grab it afterwards. So let's call it URL data, and then we can have it here. So URL data.signed URL. Okay, and we can await this function. So we're making our API call to Bria's service, and this is going to return this. And inside the result, we're going to have the image URL. So here we're going to have result, and inside of it, image URL. So let's take this image right now and upload it to Supabase. And the reason behind that is that this URL that we're receiving from Bria is not always going to be there. At some point, they're going to get rid of it. So you should save it for the user, so that later on, when they come back to your website, they can still see the image without the background. So for that, I'm going to create a new function, and this is going to be asynchronous. And let's just say it's going to be upload file to Supabase from URL. And this is going to receive the file name. And this is going to be the file path. We need actually a new file name for this. So new file path, and we need to change the file name here so that it doesn't clash with the other one. And of course we need the URL, which is this image URL. And this new file path, we need to add some kind of suffix or prefix actually to mark this as a image without background. So I'm going to create a function, get image without background name, and this is going to receive a file name string, and it's just going to add a little bit of text before. So we have our file name, and I'm just going to add no background. And now we can use this here to define our file name. We should also define this function. So for this function, I have actually already implemented it before, and let me just copy and paste it here. It's nothing crazy. We just fetch that URL that is given to us. And then we're going to check, of course, if the response is okay. And then we parse it as a blob. And then we pass that blob again to Supabase. So we just basically download the image and then upload it to Supabase. So nothing fancy going on here. The only thing that needs to be changed is the signature here, because this needs to be path, and the image URL is just URL. And let's close this. Okay, so we have our remove background function. So remove image background function. Let's go ahead and create a mutation for that. So let's go to our query.ts file, use remove image background. So use remove image background, and this is going to use the function that we just created, is imported. And we also need a new query for the new image without the background. So this is going to be actually based on the outer query. So let's call this use image without background URL. This is going to receive a name, this is a string, and this is going to call use image URL. And here we have to add this prefix again. So get image, let's check what is the function name again. Get image without background name. So let's export this, and then we pass in the name. So let's also import this. And now that we have all the backend functionality we need, we should just literally just bind it to the front end. So first we're gonna grab the name that we get from the URL, and for that we can use root.get use params, and this is going to return this name that we have in the URL. So name, and we can use it now to load the image. So use image URL, going to be this name, and we're going to also use it to load the image without background. Use image without background URL, and let's call this image without background URL. And let's try to just render these. You can actually copy this from previous upload card, and actually not much to copy, but let's take this anyway. I'm going to show this and image without background URL. So let's save, and we only see the first image because we don't have a second image here. Data does not exist, and here we forgot to call this function. So use image URL, and then we add the name of the image without background. And let's reload the page. Still no image because the image doesn't exist yet. So let's add a button. It's going to be remove background. And now let's add on click, and this should remove the background. We actually did create this use remove image background. So let's call this over here, and it's going to provide us with mutate. Let's import the function, and now we can click on click. We're going to call mutate. Maybe we can do something like this. Actually, we should provide a parameter here, and this is going to be data and the name. Okay, so that works. We have our remove background button. When this mutation ends, we want to invalidate all the queries that start with image URL. So let's have an on success parameter here, and from here we can actually grab. So we have data, we don't need. We have variables, we also don't need. On mutate result, also irrelevant, and then we have context. So this is the context that we get here, and here we have access to context.client. Here we can invalidate queries, and I'm just going to invalidate all the queries that start with image URL. So image URL, and actually this accepts an object, and this one should be called query key. I think that's how you do it. Okay, so when this function runs and it's successful, then we're going to invalidate all the queries that start with image URL. This is going to be this one, but most importantly, it's going to be this one as well. So the image without the background should be shown here. Let's click on remove background and see if there's any error. There's still no loading state, not anything. So I think what we can learn here is that showing loading and success states to the user is pretty important, because I have no idea what is happening here. So I guess we're gonna have to do it right now. Let's change this to remove background mutation and call it here. You can also show an error. So if this one has an error, then we're going to show error message. And if it's loading, so mutation that is pending, then I'm going to show a spinner. Otherwise, if it's success, then I'm going to show a circle check. Otherwise, we just show null. Okay, so it's loading. Cannot read properties of undefined reading image URL. Okay, so it seems like some kind of error coming from the backend. So, and I think this one is where the problem is happening. Could be that I have API token BriaAI key. I think in my environment variables, we have the BriaAPI key exactly. So API key. Let's save this. Let's try again now. Remove background. Okay. Won't you look at that? There you have it. So background is removed. The image is there. How awesome is that? Now let's go ahead and show this a bit better. I'm going to have this comparison slider thingy that I showed you in the beginning. And then we're going to also add a download button, and that would be it. That's it. We have created our first AI application using TanStack Start and BriaAI and Supabase. And I'm just really happy about it. So let's go ahead and show this in a better way. And for that, this is actually the case where I was talking about ShadCN UI in the beginning. The ecosystem is so big. And if you search for ShadCN comparison, I think comparison component, actually it's from the same website, ShadCN.io, and they have this beautiful comparison slider thingy that we can use. So let me just copy this and we can adjust this to our application. So we are here and now we can have our comparison tool. And of course we need to install this component and we just need to run this command again. So new terminal, npx chassis and latest add, and this is in the registry. Just awesome. Really liking this. So what we're gonna do here actually is to check if we have an image without background. If that's the case, actually if we don't have one, we're just going to show this component, and otherwise we're going to show the whole comparison component. And let's import this from comparison and just import everything. So something is missing. So let's have our after component and our before. So I have this background here. I'm just going to move it up here and background muted, and this is already looking good. It's just so awesome to build something like this. I don't know, just feels good. Let's give it some padding and let's make this rounded large. Well, and with some space. So space Y2. And here, this button, I actually want to center it. So let's create a new div and class name. And this is going to be a flex and item center. Or justify center. Okay, justify center. And actually we're going to show this component if we don't have an image without background. So here this is going to be if no image without background, I'm going to show this. And if that's the opposite case, we're going to have something else, and that will be a download button. So get it up here, download image, and of course this needs to be download from Lucid React. Yeah. Download image, this still needs to be implemented. So let's call this download and let's create this function. So for downloading this image, actually this is a very boilerplatey code that I also wrote before. This is nothing magical, but we just define a file URL and then a file name. Again, this is with no background in the beginning. And then we're gonna fetch the image as a blob, then create URL, create a link element, click on it to download it, and then remove it again from the DOM. Nothing fancy, but when you click on it, download image, and boom, there you have it. And if you go back to projects, click here, you're gonna see we have our previous uploads that I actually did not. Oh, we actually have a new problem here. As you can see, we have this no background image popping up here as well. This is of course the problem, and we should fix this on the backend. I have this endpoint here, get user uploads or something like that. This is here, this is this list, get uploaded images, and here we should filter out all the images. So filter image and image dot name that starts with no background, and this should be negative. So all the images that don't start with a background, that's it. This is one of the previous images. Let's click on it, click on remove background. Actually, let's add a better icon here. So let's make the button bigger, size large. I wish I had X large. And let's change this to want, and just looks a bit better in my opinion. And it should also be big. So size large. Great, so this is what we built. This is the homepage. I'm seeing right now the homepage needs a bit of padding here, index.tsx, and let's add some padding. Let's do 12, and text should be center. So text center. So image background remover, the best image background remover on the web. Click on get started for free. Then you're gonna land in this page, and this is the project page. You can see your previous uploads. I'm too zoomed in here. But you can see your recent uploads, and you can also upload a file. This is also too big, so let's go ahead and fix that as well. And this is in the uploader, image uploader, and let's just wrap everything here inside a div. I always like to just go once over the whole application throughout the whole flow, and just see if anything is wrong and just fix it on the fly. And just give it a max width of XL. I'm not sure how much that is, but okay, good. I should just maybe large. That's even better. And let's give it MX auto to just have it centered. So upload image and you click here. Actually, you can also drag and drop an image. Let me take something from here. I have this one. You can drop it here. And this is uploading. Actually, we're missing one step. It should invalidate this query and it should also land in the other page. So let's go back to our queries and here use uploaded image. And this is going to invalidate uploads. That's one thing. And then we have use upload image. It's called here mutate. Let's change this to mutate async. Mutate async. And then we need to navigate to the new page. So then result, here we need to actually grab use navigate from TanStack router. Const navigate is equal to use navigate. And then we can use this here. So here we're gonna navigate and this is gonna receive to. So again, project/name, and we need to provide params and the name. And let me see this result here. So mutate async, we should make sure that we receive the image name actually from here. So upload image function. This is not returned. We should return it because we actually need it. So return file name. So this result is going to be name. And okay, so let's re-upload another picture. Upload. Then we should be redirected to the project page. We land here, remove background, and it's loading. And there you have it. The background is removed and then you can just download the image and you have it here. Awesome. So that was, wow, one long video. Actually, I'm sure this is one of the longest videos I've ever made on my channel. Once again, I highly recommend checking out TanStack Start. As you've seen, it's really easy to create this kind of applications, full stack applications with TanStack Start. I'm going to put the link below to the code. Check out BriaAI. They have great endpoints. It's just really useful if you ever wanted to create some kind of AI application. Highly recommend. I'm for sure going to use it in my own project. Since this is going to be an open source project, feel free to open some pull requests if you have some ideas or you want to add some other features. Maybe you want to use some other endpoints from BriaAI, or maybe you want to add some AI credit system so that people cannot misuse it and that people can actually buy some credits and use them for image manipulation tools or something like that. So I have actually already built this project before once, so I made a lot of mistakes on the way that I did not make right now on video. Normally this stuff takes even longer, but yeah, I hope that you could learn one or two things. If you have any feedback, anything like that, just drop them in the comments. I hope you got a lot of value out of it. If you're interested in this kind of topics, then please check out my other videos. Talk about React Query, TanStack Start, TanStack Router. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next video.